Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a conversation where we're sharing perspectives. We've had some of these conversations that were more so about Christianity, Mormonism, that kind of thing. And I was in the chat, and triforcetrader, who's a beast of support and pillar of this community, he was saying something about voidness. And I thought he was joking about Protoss being too strong, so you might as well worship something they worship. But it turns out that this is actually more of a real ideology on Earth. There are even some references to voidness in some of Bruce Lee's writing, which I have prepared for us here. Welcome, triforcetrader. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Neuro. I'm very excited for this, but also terrified.
It's okay to be terrified because there's fear of the unknown, and the void may be the largest unknown that we don't know about.
Exactly.
Can I start with the quote real quick from Bruce Lee, and then I'll let you take it. All right. On voidness. Voidness is that which stands right in the middle between this and that. The void is all-inclusive, having no opposite. There is nothing which it excludes or opposes. The all-illuminating light shines and is beyond the movement of the opposites. So a big factor in voidness from what Bruce Lee talks about is dropping preconceived notions and a sort of emptiness where you're not being led or primed or copying anything else. And it's a very unique and personal kind of creative flow and energy. So what is voidness to you, and why do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I actually prepared like a whole thing. So I would agree with Bruce Lee to some extent. I think he put it pretty eloquently in just a few sentences. So maybe all of the things I'm about to say is just beating a dead horse, but we'll see. So first off, if you guys don't know who I am, my name is Matthew Owens, and today I will be talking to you about the Doctrine of Emptiness, or the Void. Now, I know Neuro has had many people who have come to the show to argue their beliefs, but in my humble opinion, after listening to these people, I generally get a sense of passion mixed with the overtones of trying to be correct. And for me, I come to you in a different spirit. I'm not here to tell you what to think, how to think, or what to believe. I come to you as basically a philosophical entertainer. When I talk to people about these types of subject matters, it is for the entertainment, like playing a video game. I am not serious, but I am being sincere. As a side note though, if you don't understand where Buddhism came from and its central tenets, this conversation may not make sense to you. I will do my best to fill the potholes along the way. I will be looking at the chat and to see if there are any questions that arise. I may stop, and of course, Nero, you may jump in and say, whoa, got a question, and we can discuss it there. And understand though that I am not an expert in this matter, and I may get some things wrong. As always, take these ideas and research them for yourself. And the resources for this topic about the void come from many different books, such as Lao Tzu, Confucius, Nihilism, the Heart Sutra, Hinduism, Buddhism. After all, the void idea comes to us from Buddhism. Now let's dive into the heart of the matter, voidness. What is this idea? So I'm going to start off with kind of like a horrible imagery and kind of work our way through it, okay? So imagine that when you are born, you were pushed off a cliff. As you are falling for years and years, you look around and you see something you think will save you from the inevitable smack onto the ground. So you cling to it. Then that particular thing that you have clung to turns out not to be the thing you want to cling to anymore. So you find something better to cling to, and you keep going back and forth, playing this game with yourself of maybe, just maybe, you can cheat death and won't have to hit the ground, or maybe perhaps not as hard. This game of clinging comes in all kinds of forms: religion, one-upmanship, debate, science, mathematics. Yet instead of viewing these things as games, people take them very seriously, pretending that the end isn't coming. They don't understand the difference between playing a game and believing in a game. Thus, to understand voidness, one's mind must be awakened to this idea that there is a difference between believing in the game and just playing a game. And once that idea roots itself, one can realize that there is nothing to cling to for any real serious reason. So why struggle so much? This ideological principle can come at a cost though. It either makes people feel liberated or depressed. But after this idea inhabits one's mind, one can never unsee it. And thus one starts to approach every situation in life with the mentality of, what game do I want to play today? Think about a situation where someone cuts you off in traffic, and your first reaction would typically be to yell, but instead you understand that that person is playing their own game and you don't have to play. This idea can be extended further when you start to think about life in a much broader sense. For example, you realize that black implies white, other implies self, and thus anything considered as a separate event is just a way of talking. The polarization game is a game about relationships. For example, many people argue with each other about religion, but the truth is that they both don't realize that without the other person's point of view, they wouldn't know what they mean. So don't argue. Thank them for existing, because you would not be you without them. That is a tough pill to swallow. This game theory principle about everything and how everything is connected is central to understanding the void theory. Unfortunately, most people only play a particular game in life, which we can call the witness, or the watcher, or the Oz effect. The witness anthology is the idea of identifying yourself with some stable entity that sits and watches the world go by. You feel that behind the stream of your thoughts, feelings, and experiences, there is something that is the thinker, the feeler, and the experiencer, instead of realizing they are all you, and you are the one with the world around you. Keep in mind, you didn't come into this world, you came out of it. That's a whole different thought process. And so I think the watcher illusion is like hypnotic for many reasons, and I think it differs from person to person, but it generally occurs in people out of anxiety, because human beings seek out continuity as we fall, because it gives the illusion of control, which is a powerful idea, I think, to cling to.
Control and independence we desire very greatly. And yeah, I've noticed that a lot, where it's not really in people's present awareness most of the time, like how important it is that you are on Earth, because it has air that you can breathe that the plants made, and light that the sun is providing, and civilization that other people have built up for you, and how that you're capitalizing on all of that as part of your environment. And if all of that's taken away, you're just on a rock in space and you die within seconds. That lack of awareness, I think, is one of the most like common things just for your standard modern person. We're in the information age, and we have all these amazing tools and devices at our disposal, and we have all this knowledge of history and philosophy that many people have toiled to create. We take all of that for granted and then just continue to take stabs at each other.
Exactly. And so to kind of dismantle this idea about yourself, or the watcher idea, so like this sense of like a separate person or being, a thinker of the thoughts, is an abstraction we create out of memory. And so we think of the self, or the ego rather, as a repository of memories, a kind of safety deposit box, or filing cabinet place where all of our experiences are stored. But that's not a very good idea. It's more that memory is dynamic. It's a repetition of rhythms, and these rhythms are all part of a parcel of the ongoing flow of the present experience. So the question to dismantle this idea that you are a separate person would be, how do you distinguish between a memory and something known in the moment? And so if you can accept that you cannot distinguish yourself from the world, and it's all you can no longer clutch to this sense of a separate self. And to wrap everything up that I just basically said, kind of in a bullet point format, is to understand the void. You must understand that 1, everything is in flux. 2, you are the universe, and you are created at every moment. And although you know you will hit the ground dead on arrival at the end of your life, you don't take it too seriously anymore. You come to realize that the point of life is to be, and that everything outside of that is just you playing a far out game. But one day, the game will end. And thus, given these understandings, the void is essentially what we would call the doctrine of change, and actually not the doctrine of emptiness.
That's interesting.
And I can go through like the history of it, of how it got to that place. So the teaching did not emerge prominently until well after the Buddha died. Somewhere between, it started to appear, like this void doctrine, this doctrine of emptiness, started to appear around 100 BCE, and it didn't reach its peak until about 200 CE. And the doctrine was formed by Mahayana Buddhists, who developed a whole class of literature translated as wisdom for going beyond. Versions of the wisdom for going beyond are recited by Buddhists worldwide, particularly a short version called the Heart Sutra. And the Heart Sutra contains the phrase, form is emptiness and emptiness is form, and then elaborates on this theme. Because of this open dialogue proposed in the Heart Sutra, Sutra, early missionaries thought that Buddhists were early nihilists. They felt that Buddhists assert that the world is nothing, but it's actually much more subtle than that. One of the prominent people who propagated this teaching of the void was Narangha. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. I just call him NJ from this point on. And the name of NJ's school of thought is called Madhyamaka, which means the doctrine of emptiness. And empty to NJ meant transience, nothing to grasp, nothing permanent, and refers explicitly to the idea of a reality that escapes all concepts. For example, if you say there is a God, that is a concept. If you say there is no God, that is also a concept. And so NJ emphasized the dialectic method of teaching Buddhism. And the dialectic method was a way of eliciting from participants their basic premises on life with their fundamental assumptions, such as he would ask questions like, what is right and wrong? What is the good life? Where do you take a stand? And in the dialectic method of teaching Buddhism, the teacher finds what the student is clinging to basically and demolishes it. And the idea here is that if you lose your fundamental beliefs, you lose your personal compass. Most people who went through this process became anxious and frightened and immediately looked for something to cling to. And in NJ's method, the teacher doesn't offer an alternative suggestion. They continue the examination process, even questioning why you need to cling to anything. Now, this is kept up for over some period of time. And the only thing that generally keeps any student who goes through this process from going out of their mind is the teacher's presence, who seems to be perfectly happy. And so when students have finally been stripped away from all of their ideas about the world through this process and realize the void, they seem to report being liberated. However, when you ask them, how do you feel about this? They can't really put a finger on it. They just say, I feel finally I've been relieved of whatever they were dealing with. And a modern day depiction of this actually happens in the movie V for Vendetta. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen that movie, but it's when V basically captures Evie and puts her in a prison cell and takes everything away from her. And yet she still doesn't give in and she's ready to die. She has no more conflictions in herself. NJ also continued to teach that you must void the void. That is, you must not cling to the void. Thus, according to NJ, the void of non-void is the greatest possible state of mind in this particular type of Buddhism. Remember, though, that all that has been voided and all that has been denied are those concepts in which one has attempted to pin down what is real. Zen teaches that you cannot nail a pig into the sky. So to be someone of the void means you do not depend on anything. NJ's methods abolish anxiety because you discover that no amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that's going to happen. It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to die. So don't put that off in the back of your mind as something to consider later. It's the most important thing to consider right now because it enables you to let go. Thus, Buddhist imagery of the void is often symbolized by a mirror. A mirror has no color to it. It merely reflects all colors that appear in it. Huang, who was the sixth patriarch of Zen, went as far to say that the void is like space. This is a very paradoxical statement because it leads into a nice little wrap up of the void and its general flavor. If the void is like space, according to Huang, then that means it contains everything: mountains, oceans, stars, good people, bad people, plants, animals, etc. Thus, what human organ contains these categories? Your mind. So it's not a far stretch to say that your mind is space. It's difficult for us to see that because we think we're in space and that we look out at it. All space, all types of space, visual, dimensional, audible, temporal, musical, tangible, are the mind. They're dimensions of consciousness. And so the great space that every one of us apprehends from a slightly different point of view in which the universe moves is the mind. So the mind is represented as a mirror because the mirror has no color in it, yet it's able to receive all different colors. 13th century Christian mystic Meister Eckhart said, "In order to see color, my eye has to be free from color." In the same way, in order to see, hear, think, and feel, you have to have an empty head. The reason why you're not aware of your brain cells is that they are void. And for that reason, you are able to experience. And so this is the main central idea for Mahayana Buddhism, where the void comes from.